Hello there, João Tambor talking. Today we're gonna be talking about muscle memory. There's a lot of people asking me like, is the muscle has really like a memory? So how can we learn faster? How can we improve our body flying skills? How can I coordinate in my body in so many different ways to fly better? So muscle memory is something that I'm always fascinated about to study, and it seems to be simple, but actually there is like a complexity involved on how it works. And today in this video I'm gonna explain some details, and that's gonna be very helpful for you in this learning process of flying with your body and know how to gain more muscle memory. It's not actually the proper way to say gain muscle memory, and you're gonna see why. So let's start. Today we're gonna first go to the concept of muscle memory. So what is it? And then we're gonna actually see how does it work and how can we improve our muscle memory. If we're gonna be like translating from the dictionary, you're gonna find that it is the ability to reproduce a particular movement without conscious thought, acquired as a result of a frequent repetition of that movement. So more you do, easier it gets to do it. Simple as that. But our challenge is, how can I have so many repetition to get to the point it's not like it is automated, I don't need to think about doing it, in a short few seconds in free fall or just a short session in the wind tunnel. So we're gonna see also at the end of this video class how can we do this in the skydiving sport. Related to what it is, I'm gonna explain, divide it in three parts. First, we're gonna be talking about self-awareness, and then we're gonna talk about motor coordination, and next we're gonna be talking about neuromuscular efficiency. Okay, let's start with self-awareness. Our brain has many different parts. I'm not gonna get into the details of the naming of the parts of the brain and all that, but today we're gonna be keeping simple. So the first thing is just to know, it is important for you to know that some part of the brain is responsible for process all the information that comes from our sense. What I'm seeing, how I smell, I feel, I taste, all my sense get to one part, and then I'm gonna process that. I'm gonna take it here as a simple example. So let's say I'm gonna drink some tea. I'm accessing so many different parts of my brain with this. So let's say first identify that I'm thirsty and I do want to drink something. Second, I'm gonna capture what my eyes are looking at, and then another part is gonna initiate a movement, and then I grab this, and then as I get there, as soon as I grab this, I'm gonna have a message coming from my hand to my arms, all my neural system, and then I also process if like I'm grabbing too strongly or softly, if this is warm or cold, and how does it weight and all that. Okay, so the most important thing here is to know that we have different parts of the brain being activated to do a task, to do a movement. And then also you have the feedback from that movement back to see if that's accurate or not. So the part of the feedback is very important to know as well. Let's keep going here. So now let's talk a little bit more about motor control. Okay, so first, I'm self-aware that I want to do a movement, to perform a transition, to fly in a desired body flight orientation or towards a direction. And then I'm gonna coordinate my body to do. And so then I'm gonna activate some group muscles. We have hundreds of muscles fiber in our body. And to coordinate all that, we require a lot of more neuromotors to activate our brain to our muscles to coordinate the movement in a complex and precise way. I would like to go back here for a moment and see that motor control is the process by which we use the brain cognition to activate and coordinate the muscles and limbs, right, involved in the performance of a motor skill. So let's say if I'm flying and head down and I want to move forward, what kind of movement my body is going to do to manipulate the wind, right, to move forward. So maybe just a small forward rotation with my shoulder exposing the scapula a little bit that way, so then I'm deflecting the wind going more backwards, and then the result of this is going to have my whole body moving, flying forward. And so to process all this, remember, going back to that part where we talk, there's a part of our brain that's gonna first thinking about what I'm gonna do, like which direction I'm gonna fly, which angle I'm gonna keep, and what's the speed. I'm flying related to someone, or I'm using the sky as a reference, all that, process all the information, and then I'm gonna coordinating my muscles to move in a precise way to execute that movement. Okay, let's talk now about neuromuscular efficiency. So neuromuscular efficiency is the ability to turn on a certain percentage of muscle fibers. So the example I just gave earlier about a simple movement with my shoulders and my scapulas to create like a desired motion forwards in head down as an example we gave it. How much energy, how much strength, how many fibers I'm gonna be activating to do that movement precisely. Because one thing is like, let me take one example here. So let's say if I'm holding some weight over my hand and then I'm adding something else over. So the first thing that I'm holding, I'm sending my brain sending message to my biceps to engage and to hold this. But then if I increase weight, so let's say if I put more tea into my cup, it's gonna be heavier, so I need to access and engage more fibers and in my muscle to be able to hold steady in the same level. But now any movement happens here, I'm still holding the same place, but as I'm adding weight inside the cup, I'm activating more muscle fibers, and I'm activating also more neurons to send that message to those fibers. And how can I control the amount of fibers and an amount of intensity it needs to be applied to a simple movement or just to hold the wind? The motor neuron, right, which is going to be connecting, is like a strip of a motor neuron, is going to be connecting from the spinal cord, right, where I come from the primary motor cortex and spinal cord, and then go to the motor neuron that goes actually to the muscle fiber. And when we get to the axon of this motor neuron, it's like it's spread out to connect to many fibers. So one axon can fire many muscle fibers. So just for you to have an idea, if you just simply walking, you firing like energy into like around 200 muscle fibers. So imagine like to fly and hand down and do like some precisely acrobatic movement. You're doing like hundreds of fiber being accessed from motor neurons. In muscle memory, how does it work? We saw how it is and how does it work. We saw a little bit, but now just how like this part here, it's more like how we usually mention especially in skydiving, how we usually mention about like getting muscle memory. So let's say you get a movement as a goal, for instance, like open your parachute. Okay, so you're gonna do like when you're a student, you're gonna do a lot of practice in the ground, but the first time you do is gonna do a little bit slow. You don't know where exactly your hand goes behind your back, but then after you do a few times, it gets so quickly and so easy, you start doing without thinking about it. Okay, so now there's one thing that's very important for us to know here. Imagine it like we're talking earlier when we start this class, and how can we perceive the surrounds and how we process that in some part of the brain. Let's take an example to feel the wind. So in order to feel the wind, I'm using the baroreceptors that sense the pressure of the wind. If I just press my hand here, I'm gonna activate the same neural terminals that's gonna measure it, like it's gonna sense the pressure of my hand and send the signal to that part of my brain that's gonna understand how much I'm pressing. If I'm really press harder, I'm gonna have like a strong frequency sending there, and so I can really feel it. With the wind, if I just blow, it's so soft, but it is the same terminal nerves. And over I'm feeling that wind, I start develop a way to precisely feel which way the wind is sliding over my body after you doing a few times. Okay, let's continue here with how does it work and how to improve muscle memory. Just to remember, muscle memory is a short way to explain that complexity of how can I perceive how can I process all the information and apply it into a coordinated movement. Practice, that's the first thing, learning by repetition. And so as you repeat over and over, it gets easier to do for the next time. Do a slow performance so that way you have more time to process new information. So if I'm doing a movement for the first time, if I'm really taking time to perform that, I'm giving time for my brain to process and read the feedback from the movement. Remember, we mentioned earlier about how much information it needs to be processed. So if I do super fast, I might not have time for that feedback to really see, okay, that was a right move being performed, or no, that was not accurate. And if you practice visualization, you also activating parts of your brain related to how you learn the movements, but also you can visualize it in slow motion, so that it's very helpful as well to gain that muscle memory. Let's talk about practice sessions during of a training session. Let's say if I have 2 minutes in the wind tunnel to fly, I'm trying to put a lot of movements to learn. So let's say 5, 6 or more different movements to learn. I'm gonna be very confused. I'm not gonna have time to really process all that information that's been given in a different ways. So if I concentrate to learn one thing at a time, so that makes easier to gain that muscle memory. And also this part of it related to the duration of training sessions. We're also talking about the timing between each session and not just the amount of things we're doing inside one session. Okay, perfect execution. And here that's how I mentioned earlier in the first time that we learn by repetition, but also if I repeat a wrong movement, I might coordinate myself to do that movement in a proper way. So that's why it's important to have a good feedback. Other thing that's important is, let's say if you have complex movement that you want to learn, and it's good to break into small parts. Like if you learn how to carve, whatever position, belly fly, back fly, head down or head up, if you learn how to carve, it's good first to learn how to turn, to go forward, how to go sideways, and then use all that three together to do a nice orbit carve. So just go with the flow, take it easy on yourself, and also if you do some movement that that wasn't perfect, that's really good already, because you're self-aware that was not a good execution, but don't make hard on yourself. In the past years that I've been seeing a lot of students, and they when they do some movement, they do a transition, they go with their head up, oh, that wasn't good, and they try again, oh, that wasn't good. So the energy they're spending on making hard on themselves is taking the time away. They could be focusing that energy on slow down, off the flow, and do it again, and be patient about It takes time to build muscle memory. So sometimes patience is the secret to learn faster. And it's kind of awkward because if you're not learning in the speed you'd like to learn, if you're not acquiring a lot enough muscle memory like you would like to, and then sometimes we try to to rush, we don't take it easy and we're not patient about it, so then you actually take longer time to learn than if you just take some time, breathe in, rest, and relax. I designed a master class to talk about how can we improve peak performance. In this class here about muscle memory is very important, and I decided to break this into a different class because it's so much information to pass in one class that I decided to break this in two. And so that's important for you to really understand when we mention about muscle memory, everything that's involved. In this master class that we're gonna be talking about peak performance, we're gonna talk a lot about how can I improve, how can I reach peak performance. And you're gonna see that's very important, the time for rest. And also on this next masterclass, we're gonna talk about the intensity of the strength. And we're gonna be talking about how can we exercise to increase that self-awareness, and how can we also improve the muscle efficiency and to gain motor coordination to do complex movements, especially related to flight. Okay, movements relating to flight, because as we saw earlier in this class, it's very important to sense, to have self-awareness, and then to process all the information, then to control properly your muscles and the intensity of the energy you apply, especially in the wind, because as we saw earlier also in this class, that it's very lightly sensed. So if I can feel which way the wind's sliding over my body, it makes easier for me to control, to have a good motor coordination, to manipulate precisely which way I'm gonna slide that wind. I'm gonna also show some exercise that you can do at home or anywhere that's really simple, but once you have the mindset and you're conscious about what you're training and the main goal of that, which is like a technique to improve your self-awareness, then it's gonna be even faster for you to learn complex movements as you fly. Imagine this, two actions very different, like you either contract or relax your muscles. But between these two actions, there is a wide range of intensity. I can contract my muscles at 50%, 40, 20, 25. And then I can variate between, okay, now I'm contracting 40% of my strength. Now I'm 60, now I'm change between 50 and 55, and so on. So just an example, on the back fly position, I'm gonna be varying that intensity in a very low, let's say between 20 and 40%. But when I'm flying head down, if I'm really flying a super fast speed and I'm holding, especially if I'm flying the tunnel that has no much speed, I might gonna be using between 70 and 80% of the intensity of my shoulders muscles, like my deltoids. And some people, they don't know how to, they didn't learn yet how to sense that intensity. And this exercise helps to gain that self-awareness. So I invited you to click in the link that has been sent together with this video to subscribe to this masterclass. Today we have a very short class. The master class is going to be a little bit longer, but with a lot of good content. And it is very important for you to understand the muscle memory before you get into this master class, because you're going to be talking a lot about other things, how to improve body flying skills. And it is important to know this because we're going to be mentioned here and there during this class. And also at the end of this class, I'm going to have a surprise for you, and you're really going to like that. So make sure you subscribe. Link to this masterclass is going to be sent to your email. Thanks to be here with me, and I hope to see you in our masterclass.